In the dim early morning, Emily Parker woke up before her alarm clock. The digital display showed 5:45. She stretched slightly in bed, squinting at the faint light streaming through the window. There was an unusual tension in the Saturday air. Today was her brother Jason's important baseball game. As Emily fumbled with the buttons of her uniform, she recalled her mother's words from last night. "Tomorrow we'll all go cheer for Jason." There had been a certain stiffness in that voice. Up early again. Emily's shoulders jumped slightly at the sudden knock. Turning around, she saw her mother Linda peeking through the doorway. In her pale blue dress, her mother looked like the dawn sky. "Good morning, Mom." "Good morning. Let me do your hair." Her mother's fingers gently touched her hair. Though her mother's reflection in the mirror showed a soft expression, there were slight shadows under her eyes. Emily thought she'd heard someone talking on the phone late last night. "It's the semi-finals today. Since it's such an important day for Jason, we should get ready early." Her mother's voice rang slightly higher than usual. Downstairs at the breakfast table, her father Michael and brother were already seated. Jason, in his pristine white baseball uniform, was nodding at their father's words while stirring his cereal. Their father, newspaper spread before him, was speaking earnestly to Jason from time to time. "Today's the semi-finals. If you become the winning pitcher, you'll catch the scouts' attention. With your talent at 12, your future is guaranteed." "I'll do my best, Dad." Her father couldn't hide his excitement. Meanwhile, Emily's "good morning" as she came down the stairs was met with just a slight nod. Such different treatment had become routine. The breakfast laid out on the table was more elaborate than usual. Golden maple syrup glistened atop fluffy pancakes. The savory aroma of bacon filled the room. "Emily, eat properly." At her mother's voice, Emily nodded silently. Her fingers trembled slightly as they gripped the fork. Outside the window, the early morning sunlight grew steadily stronger. Saturday morning was beginning in the quiet residential area of Chester County. No one realized that this peaceful breakfast table would become like a final snapshot for the family. On Wednesday afternoon, practice for the youth baseball team was underway at Chester County Baseball Park as usual. Emily sat with her mother at the edge of the bench, working on her math homework. Occasionally, she would look up at the sound of her brother Jason's pitches. Amazing pitching. The major leagues aren't just a dream for you. Every time her father and the coach's voices rang out, the LED lights on the field seemed to shine even brighter. Having finished her homework, Emily glanced at her mother's profile. Her mother was on her phone, apparently sending messages to someone. The name Mrs. W was visible on the screen. Her mother hastily closed it and put on a smile. After practice, the family stopped at Target. In the baseball equipment section, her father went straight to the register with an expensive new glove. "With your talent, this level of equipment is only natural." On the way home, Emily spoke up in a small voice. "Hey, Mom. I'd like to learn piano." Her mother's hands tensed on the steering wheel for a moment, and she showed an apologetic expression. "I'm sorry. Right now, we're stretched thin with Jason's baseball." In the rearview mirror, her mother's eyes seemed to be trying to convey something. Once home, her father called out to Emily. Emily, fold the laundry today. You're a girl, so you need to learn to do housework properly. In the living room, Jason was happily examining his new glove. A Phillies game played on TV. As Emily carried the laundry basket, she remembered yesterday's music class. How she had secretly touched the piano keys in the empty music room after school. The cool sensation still lingered on her fingertips. While helping with dinner preparations, Emily entrusted a small wish to the twilight sky visible through the kitchen window. Tomorrow was her friend Sarah's piano recital. She planned to go secretly. She just wanted to immerse herself in a world filled with music, if only for 30 minutes. On the morning of the game, Emily woke up with a severe headache. Her throat burned like fire, and her body felt heavy as lead. The numbers on the digital clock seemed to waver hazily. The statue of the Virgin Mary by her bedside seemed to smile more sadly than usual. Emily, get up. It's already 7. Her mother's voice came through the door. Though she tried to answer, only a hoarse sound emerged from her throat. She vaguely remembered overhearing her mother's secretive phone conversation before bed last night. Yes, tomorrow morning. Everything is prepared. The door opened, and her mother entered. In her hands hung Emily's navy blue dress, her finest, usually reserved for Sunday services at St. Mary's Church. Her mother's expression froze. "Oh my, you have a fever." Her mother's hand felt cold against her forehead. Deep wrinkles formed between her mother's brows. In her eyes, determination and anxiety seemed to mingle. "Are you feeling sick?" Her mother's worried voice was interrupted by her father's from downstairs. "Linda, what are you doing? It's time to leave." "Michael, Emily has a fever. We can't miss today. The scouts are coming." The sound of her father's footsteps coming up the stairs. Her mother's hands trembled minutely. Somehow, she now held a small paper bag. "But this child. We promised to all go cheer together. We're family, so deal with it." Her father's voice was cold and final. His shadow reflected distortedly in the glass of the family photo on the wall. In the car, Emily huddled in the back seat. The smell of the supposedly new seat covers was oddly nauseating, making her feel sick. The scenery outside the window flowed past like an old film. The street trees of Westchester Street streamed by like a green band. In the passenger seat, her mother clutched her handbag tightly. When something like a piece of paper threatened to fall out, she hurriedly pushed it back in. In the driver's seat, her father was nervously reacting to the weather forecast on the radio. "Just one day of clear weather, that's all we need. Just one day." Suddenly, everything went dark before her eyes. Her stomach churned like a stormy sea. Something unstoppable welled up from her throat. "Mom. I feel sick. Emily." As her mother turned around, a light of resolution appeared in her eyes. "Stop." Her mother's cry rang out. But it was too late. The new car seats were ruined by Emily's vomit. The sharp, sour smell filled the car. "What have you done?" Her father's shout reverberated through the car. The sound of him hitting the steering wheel violently shook Emily's head. The vibration rang like church bells. On such an important day. Jason, this must have thrown off your concentration. Jason in the passenger seat kept staring out the window. His profile showed a slight trace of confusion. The leather of his tightly gripped baseball glove was wet with sweat. Girls are truly worthless. Nothing but trouble. Her father's words pierced through Emily's fever-clouded consciousness. Her mother silently wiped the back seat. The trembling in her hands was now impossible to hide. There was a gentleness in her cleaning motions, as if saying a final farewell. Chester County Baseball Park parking lot. The early morning sun reflected blindingly off the asphalt. Her father's anger filled the car like a dark cloud. That's enough. Emily, go to your grandmother's house. Her father declared while gripping the steering wheel. His eyes in the rearview mirror no longer looked at Emily. His gaze was already fixed on the baseball field scoreboard. I'll take her. Her mother's voice was strangely quiet. Like a line she had rehearsed for a long time. The papers in her handbag fluttered like leaves in the wind. Come back quickly. There's no time before the game starts. With her father's words behind them, her mother took Emily's hand and got out of the car. The morning air was still chilly. Jason. As Emily turned back, her brother gave a small wave. His expression seemed somehow sad. His true feelings seemed hidden in the shadow of his baseball cap. Chester County Baseball Park parking lot. Her mother's car moved away from the baseball field. In the back seat, Emily was still dizzy with fever. Mom, this isn't the way to Grandma's. Her mother remained silent, driving down unfamiliar roads. Outside the window, familiar Wawa signs and church spires passed by one after another. 30 minutes later, the car entered a quiet residential area. Rich with greenery, each house had well-maintained lawns. The car stopped in front of a house with a blue roof. Emily. Her mother turned around, taking a small paper bag from her handbag with trembling hands. Take this. Inside were clothes and Emily's favorite teddy bear. An unfamiliar medal hung around the bear's neck. Mom, where are we? Tears welled up in her mother's eyes. But behind them was a strong light of determination. Emily, listen carefully. Mrs. Wilson, who lives here, is a very kind person. For a while. Her mother's words trailed off. Like she was desperately trying to force out words stuck in her throat. But Dad. Mommy will come back for you soon. I promise. Mrs. Wilson was indeed a kind-looking woman, just as rumored. Her gray-streaked hair was neatly arranged, and she wore a warm smile. She had the same kind of serenity one might see at church. Come, Emily. Let's go inside. Mrs. Wilson's voice was as gentle as melted honey. A final embrace. In her mother's arms, Emily noticed a strange smell. Under the familiar fabric softener scent, something else, perhaps paper. The edge of some papers peeked slightly from her mother's chest pocket. Mom. It's okay. We'll see each other soon. Her mother's voice echoed as if from far away. The sound of a car driving away. Emily stood frozen in front of the blue-roofed house. The metal around her teddy bear's neck glinted in the morning sun. A phone number was engraved on it in small letters, like some kind of signal. From inside Mrs. Wilson's house came the sound of a piano. 3 days later in the early morning, while the sky still held a purple tinge, Emily stood in her home's backyard. As Mrs. Wilson had told her, an emergency spare key was hidden under the kitchen window. With trembling small hands, she retrieved the key from beneath the stone. Parents at work, brother at early practice. The house should be empty. Still, the sound of inserting the key seemed too loud. Opening the front door, the familiar furniture felt like it belonged to strangers. Paying excessive attention to her footsteps on the stairs, Emily headed to her room. She had come to get the family photo kept in her desk drawer. The one where her mother was smiling. But entering the room, the photo frame was completely gone. The drawers, the closet, all empty. As if Emily's very existence had been erased. The photo, where? Her small voice echoed in the silence. Then, she heard something fall in her mother's room. Emily held her breath. But no other sounds followed. Fearfully stepping into her mother's room. The morning sun streamed into the dim room, making dust motes visible. The large closet door was slightly open. Peering inside, something gleamed in the back. Reaching in, she found a dust-covered leather diary. Next to it, a wooden box with a small key. Just as she tried to open the box, a photo slipped out. In the yellowed photograph were her mother when she was young and a woman who resembled her mother. On the back, along with a date, were the words, "Me and Katie." A woman with a smile like her mother's twin. But Emily had always heard her mother was an only child. With trembling hands, she opened the diary. The first page was dated over 20 years ago. From there, her mother's life unfolded. Today, father was violent again while drunk. Katie took my place again. Even though she's my younger sister, she always protects me. With each turn of the page, an unknown side of her mother emerged. Katie has been hospitalized. From father's violence. If only I were stronger. If only I had more courage. Katie never woke up. My precious sister. The sister I couldn't protect. Wedding day. Michael is a kind person. But sometimes I see shadows of father in him. I want to believe this marriage isn't a mistake. Then pages with recent dates. Today again, my husband spoke violently. I try to smile so Emily won't notice, but if only Katie hadn't defied him that day, she would still be alive. I won't repeat the same mistake. I will absolutely protect my daughter. Mrs. Wilson is trustworthy. She's the only one I can entrust Emily to. The plan is progressing steadily. The church support group is helping too. But we must not be discovered. For Emily's sake. The last page was dated yesterday. Tomorrow, everything begins. Emily, Mommy will definitely protect you. I want you to live the life Katie couldn't. A life where you can play piano and chase your dreams. Her hands shook too much to hold the diary anymore. The tear stains on the pages became wet with fresh tears. Emily. A voice behind her nearly stopped her heart. Turning around, there stood her mother. She said she'd left work early. There was no more hesitation in her mother's eyes. I'm sorry. Mommy had to act. In her mother's arms, Emily understood everything. That day's banishment was actually a rescue. Her mother's trembling hands weren't from fear, but love. And now, their new life was about to begin. In her mother's arms, Emily couldn't stop crying. The morning sun gently illuminated her mother's profile. Her expression showed no more fear or hesitation. "Let's sit down." Her mother took Emily's hand and sat on the edge of the bed. Their shadows merged on the wall. "I've wanted to tell you for so long. But no one could know." Her mother took an envelope from the desk drawer. Inside were documents and several photos. "This is my sister, your Aunt Katie." The woman in the photo showed a smile similar to her mother's. A photo taken in front of a piano. Her fingers looked elegant, as if dancing over the keys. Katie dreamed of becoming a pianist. But her mother's voice caught. After a deep sigh, she quietly continued. "Our father, your grandfather, was a very strict man. Especially with girls. He would say, 'Girls don't need dreams.'" Emily shuddered involuntarily. The words echoed similarly to her father's. One day, Katie defied him. She said, "I have value. I won't give up my dreams." Her mother closed her eyes. As if the memory from 20 years ago was still vivid. After that day, Katie never woke up. "I couldn't protect her." Her mother's hands trembled slightly. Emily wrapped her small hands around them. "When I met your father, I thought he was different. Kind and dependable. But after marriage, he changed gradually. Especially after Jason was born." Her mother took another envelope from her handbag. "I've been preparing this for 6 months. Mrs. Wilson was introduced to me through the church support group." The contents of the envelope were revealed one by one. Domestic Violence Victim Support Center documents. A new housing contract. School transfer papers. Acceptance papers from a mother-child support facility. A restraining order application. Saying I was shopping, I'd go to the support center. Saying I was having lunch with friends, I'd consult lawyers. All preparations to protect you. Fragments connected in Emily's memory. Her mother's late-night phone calls. Unnaturally early wake-ups. Whispered conversations at church. Mrs. Wilson's name. The medal around the teddy bear's neck. But why that day? That day, I had already contacted the support center and police. Your illness was unexpected, but it actually made the plan easier. Her mother's voice carried strength. With your father's anger, no one will think our disappearance strange. They'll think, of course, such a troublesome child and mother would leave. Mrs. Wilson's house. It's a temporary shelter. A safe place connected to the support center. Tomorrow, we can move to our new home. Her mother stood up and opened the curtains. Sunlight filled the room. Emily, no one will ever say girls have no value again. You have the right to have dreams. You can learn piano too. Just then, there was a sound downstairs. Her mother's expression tightened. Dad. It's okay. The police and support center staff are waiting outside. Her mother embraced Emily's shoulders. "Come, let's go. A new life is waiting for us." Hand in hand, they went down the stairs. On the kitchen table lay an envelope addressed to her father. Inside was divorce papers and a letter in her mother's handwriting. "To Michael, I won't follow my sister's fate. And I won't let you destroy my daughter's life either. Linda." 1 month later, in a small apartment near St. Mary's Women's Shelter. Morning sunlight streams through the window, gently illuminating the piano in the living room. Once more, from Middle C. Mrs. Wilson's voice rings out gently. Besides her work at the support facility, she had begun teaching Emily piano. Small fingers tentatively touched the keys. "Well done, Emily." Her mother calls out with a smile, peeking from the kitchen. In her apron, she no longer trembles. Her new office job has restored confidence to her expression. "Mom, look." Emily's drawing from school is pinned to the refrigerator by her mother. Memories with new friends from Westchester Elementary School. No one can take away that smile anymore. In the evening, when her mother returns from work, an unexpected envelope has arrived. From Jason. "Emily, how are you? I quit baseball. Dad's been drinking heavily lately, but I'm okay. I'm singing in the choir now. I realized how stupid Dad's idea of manliness is." Inside the envelope were a choir photo and a small brooch, something Emily had wanted before. "I wonder if we'll meet again." At Emily's whisper, her mother nods gently. "Yes, surely. But for now, this is our time." At night, Emily writes in her diary. A pure white notebook from Mrs. Wilson. "Today, I practiced piano again. Next month is a small recital at church. Mom says, don't rush, but I have a song I want to play. The one Aunt Katie used to play." Outside the window, Philadelphia's night skyline sparkles. Her mother studies for a new qualification on the sofa, and on the table lie materials for next week's domestic violence support volunteer work at church. In the quiet night air, soft piano notes ring out. It's the sound of a new life's prelude. No one can silence this melody anymore. On the diary's last page, Emily adds, "Dear Aunt Katie, I have value. So does Mom, and all girls. So please play piano peacefully in heaven. Your dream lives on in me."